Yay.
Hello, welcome in everyone. Hi everyone, welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I am so happy that you are here with us today. It is another special day today as we welcome another guest to talk to us about how we continue to create this beautiful impact in our community while preserving our well-being. So thank you for taking either your morning, afternoon to join us or on your break. Really, this series was really inspired to help us to think differently about how we do the work so then we can continue to do this work for a long time. And in a world that honors and holds the written word to the highest degree, these conversations are really intended to honor our heritages and our ancestors who have shared wisdom through storytelling and community idea exchange. This space is for the learners who learn by doing, listening, and visualizing. We are here for you. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Manuela Contreras. I am your host today. I am the founder and chief inspiration officer of Con Fuerza Experiences. And as a leadership alignment coach, facilitator, and strategic partners, I created Con Fuerza so we can exist in a world where we can live in harmony with pursuing our purpose and preserving our well being. I'm a Latina woman with caramel skin, brown wavy hair that is half up, half down today, with brown eyes. And today I'm wearing my brown sunglasses, these pearl gold and knitted long earrings that are made by artisanal artists in Colombia, a black shirt and a tan blazer. And I am sitting in front of a cream background with eucalyptus branch on the left and the Con Fuerza logo on the right with the hashtag Wisdom Wednesday title. Great. So that's a little bit about me. And as you get settled into this space, I like to share a few reminders about the event today. For those of you who learn by visualizing and have support needing closed captioning, please look to the LinkedIn automatically puts on closed captioning sometimes, but if you don't see it, you can see that on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also, we love connecting with you and hearing from you throughout the conversation. So feel free to comment at the bottom section of the LinkedIn, or if you want privacy and asking us private questions that you don't want the public to see, feel free to private message me and I'll share those out to us. And as you may notice, I love facilitating and using my notes as a way to guide our conversation. So if at any point I am looking away from the screen, please know I'm fully present. It's just a way to support me being able to fully be here and facilitate our conversation. And the last thing I like to ask is for love and grace for life. Although we have been in these virtual spaces for a long time, we know the technology or the sounds around us. And so if anything happens to our life, we'll just hop back right in after we address whatever concern may come up. And lastly, I do like to be clear that all that we are sharing, the advice and diverse perspectives that are coming in, do come from our expertise and our lived experiences. However, none of these advice are a substitute for professional medical advice or a one size fits all. So we hope that this inspires you to reflect deeper about the practices and practices that may or may not be working for you. And so you can find what works best for you. Great. So before we move forward into our conversation, I love starting every Wisdom Wednesdays with a somatic practice that allows us to get grounded into our space today. I also encourage this to be a practice that you can take back to either your personal routine or if you're a leader at an organization looking for a more grounded way to start your meetings, retreats, or check ins, that you can use this to really acknowledge the full person that you're connecting with. So today we're going to do something very simple. We're going to do a bit of a breathing and movement to really ground us into our space. So I encourage everyone to find a space that feels comfortable for you. If you're able and comfortable to put your feet on the ground, you can put your hands on top of your thighs or by your heart if it feels the most comfortable. And then we're going to focus on our breath by taking a deep breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. And then once we fully release the breath out through our mouth, we're going to breathe in. And as we breathe in, we're going to look over our right shoulder. As we bring our head back to the center, release it. Once again, breathing in through our nose and looking over our left shoulder. Holding it there for a moment. And then slowly releasing it back to center. And we're going to slowly breathe in through our nose, bring our head down. Hold it. And as we slowly release, we're going to bring our head around in a circle pattern until we bring our head back to our chin, feeling on our chest. The same, breathing in through our nose, keeping our head facing down, and now going in a circle direction towards the other side, counterclockwise, all the way around, creating that stretch and movement in our neck and in our body. Then we're going to slowly release our arms wherever they are, and we're going to shaking our shoulders up and down, releasing. This is great if there's any tension, if there's any stress, if you're breathing out. And then releasing. As you release, breathing in. And feel that sensation. Feel as your body is starting to calm down and release. Release any worry, stress, allowing you to be fully present here. That tingling you may feel is a good way of your body letting you know that it is fully here and present. Take a moment to breathe in and take it all in. Be here, to be present, to be proud and in gratitude with yourself and in acceptance that you are making a commitment to think broadly about how you can continue to care for yourself on this journey. And just by being here, by thinking about it, by opening yourself up to it, please accept that gratitude and admiration for yourself for allowing yourself to do all of this work. Now we're going to give ourselves a big hug. Woo!
I was feeling that.
We love it. And then join us. Yes, we need that. We need that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for those of you who joined us in it. I hope this is something that can help you to be present and fully in your body, which we need and love so much on this healing and well-being journey. Well, welcome back. I'm really excited for our conversation today. Our title is Restorative Justice, and has a special place in my heart because as I started really diving deep into what are other ways that we can support our leaders in finding and doing this work that allows us to consider a full human being in this work towards creating social impact in our community, I was in awe by healing justice and restorative justice because even though its roots were very connected to the criminal justice system, and when you look at it, that's initially what it brings you to, honoring the impact and the harm that had been done on crime victims. We are now seeing in the past few years its movement towards the social sector and how other leaders that are activists and social justice leaders or leaders that are really just trying to find how to exist in doing this work, we can also use this practice. And so I'm really excited to bring Dahlia Quintanilla with us today so she can share with us about our restorative justice practice here. I'm so excited. I want to give you some space to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you here to this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My pronouns are she, her, ella. For a visual description, I am a Latina with brown skin and black curly hair. I'm wearing a maroon tank top and gold dangly earrings. I'm also sitting in front of a cream zoom background with the eucalyptus on the left and the Confuerza logo on the right. So, what has brought me to this? Wow. It has been a culmination of all my experience teaching in the classroom with young people from grades kindergarten through eighth, and then my experience teaching adults, working in the workshop space, in the professional development space, and writing curriculum around restorative justice, and then also in my experience now as an entrepreneur and really focused and driven on how to let restorative justice breathe in all the social sectors like you were pointing at, Manuela. So I'm really excited about our conversation today and just the ways that restorative justice is gonna come. It's gonna come. The heat's here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much to learn about it. I mean, to your
Mhm.
point, the breathing, I love that narrative that you've set for us around
Mm.
this work. It's such a living, breathing practice. And
Mhm.
because of its roots and origins around Indigenous communities, how we're really intentional about working with it to ensure that we honor its origins and not appropriate it, but really can be intentional about how we can bring it into our spaces in a really authentic and supportive way. So please
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about, why this work was how this connects to well-being and why that you think that this is important.
Yeah. It was in my first year teaching that I recognized the need for restorative justice, but I didn't have the language for it yet.
Mm,
I was super eager, to get into the field of education. I'd always been in awe of teachers. I thought they were the coolest thing. I was the older sister that, made fake worksheets for my siblings and made them do them because I thought it was fun and cool. And so I was excited when I got into the classroom, and then I was hit with the brick wall of reality that is college preparation programs don't fully prepare teachers to actually meet the needs of kids today because we're still operating and teaching out of colonized and outdated materials and understandings of how we learn, how culture plays a part of that, huge part of that, and also just the biology of being a human. We need movement, we need play, and all these other things. So my intuition guided me to start pulling these things into the classroom
mm,
naturally. I would do things like run a morning meeting where we would check in with everybody in the beginning of the day and make sure, like, hey, you good? You good? How we feeling? What do we have for breakfast? Like, these things to just connect. Um, Later to find out it's called restorative justice when you prioritize relationship and you take the time to really check in with students. I was challenged in my first year because I had one student that I could not connect with. I had one student who was just, in my mind and in my language back then, I would have called him difficult, right? I would have said his behavior is out there and I can't manage and control it. The school I was working in, very traditional, very punitive. Um, the behaviors in that school were sort of, it was like a cultural norm that like we're at the bad school. No coincidence also that it was the school that had a large population of black and brown students and families, right? So underfunded, there was holes in my ceiling, like I had you look, I'm not going to go too into that, but so I'm like, how do I reach this student? I don't understand. I tried the punitive thing because that's what the teachers at the school had told me to do, right? Like don't smile until November, these sort of cultural things that we are passed down to, but it just did not resonate with me to add more harshness to this kid's life, because once I actually started talking to him and getting to know his life, which was the solution, I was like, wow, you have a lot going on. These behaviors make sense, right? The humanizing aspect of restorative justice started really blossoming, and I was able to connect with him. So that was really the first, like, wait, what is this? I had one little training, and then I've realized now, all these years later, that the path to practicing a restorative lifestyle is also the path to practicing well-being. They are one and the same. They are intertwined and interwoven. I know a lot of times our mind really likes when things are like clean cut in a box, but the truth of it, I know mine does. It's like, oh, so satisfying to organize things, right?
Mhm.
But the truth of it is that these concepts and things are interwoven. So that's it's kind of my, yeah, response to that.
Yes. Oh, no, that is so powerful. I love first of all, you're just bringing me back, and this may be silly, but I'm obsessed with Abbott Elementary right now. I don't know if you've seen it.
Just finished season 3. No worries. I'm with you.
So if
So good.
anyone and I mean, when
So good.
I've talked to teachers, so many are like, "This is such an accurate representation of
Yes.
the school system." So for our viewers, if you haven't seen Abbott Elementary, highly recommend. Really create empathy around teachers are really trying to be honest and supportive in the systems of education that don't really provide those types of resources to do all this work that you're talking about. And but I also what
Right.
I love hearing you talk about is the very real realities of the systems that we have. And I used to say this all the time in the leadership development space as well, around the systems that we have really weren't built for us. And so in that
Mm,
sense, we constantly feel like we're pushing against a curve around something that
mm,
we're told we're supposed to do and that we
mhm,
should do because it makes you a good teacher or a good
mm,
professional or a good
mm,
leader. And then what you said, but it never felt right to me. There was something in me that just didn't feel connected to that way of being
mm.
because it wasn't true. It wasn't true to you, or it
Yeah.
wasn't true to how the reality of what you knew the students may be going through. In some cases, it may be your employees that are going through, or your
Mhm,
community members that are going through. So that's what I love, how you've connected this to well-being, is that it's not just about, oh, this is going to be good for our health, but no,
mm,
this is also about how are we getting back to our most intuitive self? How are we getting back to
mm,
our truest form that feels connected to us, and not how we've been like manipulated or getting into molding ourselves to this like persona or archetype that
mhm.
really isn't honoring our heritage, our cultures, our backgrounds, our values. And
Right.
this is like calling us into saying, hey, that little voice was right. That little voice is onto something. Let's go deeper.
Yes, the little voice wins again. The little voice wins again.
Every time. I love it. So let's take a step back and talk more
Mhm,
about like the foundation of restorative justice. I mean, we mentioned a little bit its roots and its origins, but I love having all of us start at the same place. So can you
totally.
explain to us how do you define restorative justice? What does it really mean, and what does it look
Mm,
like in practice?
yeah. This is such a powerful question that, because of what you sort of touched on in the beginning of our conversation, of like, we want to make sure we're not appropriating. This is a big, it comes from indigenous traditions from all over the world. Like, how do you put language to something that is felt? So I want to just preface this definition I'm about to read to you with that language and words sometimes don't fully express, and I do call all the things that I define working definitions. So for liberated learning and my experience and work in restorative justice, this is sort of like the culminating understanding of what restorative justice is in that, like, you know, that definition space. So take a moment to, like, listen, receive it, and just see what comes up for you. Okay.
Mhm.
Restorative justice centers cultivating healthy and connective relationships with the self, with others, and with our natural environment. Rooted in indigenous wisdom, restorative justice breaks cycles of harm that we've been conditioned into replaying onto ourselves and others. With our shared, inconceivable human sacredness at the center, we exercise intentional compassion for being human and being socialized in toxic systems.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm just always like, ah, like just a relief, a sigh of like, wow, there's a solution. And that's truly what fuels me and makes me feel so passionate about this topic is that it really does feel like a solution to implement and be and practice
Mm.
like right now, centering relationship is the real main takeaway from that. Restorative justice prioritizes and centers relationship. We, as we all know, and especially in the wellness space, you've probably heard a million times, we are social beings, we are social creatures, we have all these neurochemicals that do all the things for us. Lovely, it's fabulous. But also, there is this huge gap in the space of like, okay, well, how do I human? How do I do this? How do I practice it? And what's so beautiful is that restorative justice gives us that framework, it gives us that
Mm.
guidance where it's never going to tell you this is the answer, do X, Y, and Z, but is
Mm.
going to call you into deeper reflection to yourself, and you're knowing what you touched on earlier, right? Of that intuitive sense. What is your heart? What is your truth? What is your values, drawing you to and drawing you towards? And so that's what's so beautiful. It draws us into deeper and more vulnerable, courageous connection with ourselves, and then that is going to multiply into other people. Right now you got to show up in your community in that way. How you got to practice that courageous conversation with someone that you have conflict with, which is something else that restorative justice addresses, right? And people who are somewhat familiar might think like, oh, isn't that just conflict resolution? And
Mm.
it's a huge part of it because again, we're not giving guidance on how to fight well, how to disagree respectfully, um,
Mm.
and I had a saying in my fifth grade classroom that was like, respectfully, I disagree. Respectfully, I disagree. It's like, I just always think of like my little fifth graders being like, respectfully, I disagree. And it being like a funny thing to hear a little kid say, but also like, that tells you something, right? Like, why is that a funny thing? Like, we should learn this language from a young age. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, that's kind of just the bubblings of what comes up after reading the definition. Curious
Mm.
what sprung up in you, Manuela.
Ooh, girl, so much.
All the tabs are open.
Right, like, what? No, honestly, I think what initially really called me into this work is, I mean, talking about conditioning, right? For us
Yes.
who are really passionate about, social justice, and I grew up being like, I want to make this world a little better, and had my little,
Mm,
we change the world shirts. For those little girls and boys and people, that had that experience and then went out into the world to do that type of work and just
mm,
felt, to everything you're saying, just felt like crushed by the realities of what it was, or feeling like, oh, in
mhm,
order for me to do this work, there's only one type of way of being an activist, and
mhm,
being in the marches, and or being in policy, or and the reality, what I liked and brought me into this work is, yes, those are deeply important. We need
mm.
the activists that are marching and being at university campus and speaking about these topics and
Yep.
policy changes. We do need these, what we call, the archetype of the warriors that are
Mm,
out there fighting the fight, and we need that. We've seen it. We
mm,
cannot do this work without it. And
mhm,
also, for those of us that feel that our warriorness is also rooted in a place of compassion,
Mm.
the healers in us, the people of us that also want to see, want to support, and want to find other ways of bringing this change. There are other ways. It is, you don't need to just be a warrior and like take on all of this, and
Mhm.
we can move in cycles, right? Like sometimes you need to be a warrior and you need to be fighting and being in the, quote unquote, the front
Yeah.
lines, but sometimes it's okay to take a step back and be like, how are there other ways for me to also do this work? And what I like
Mm.
restorative justice and healing justice is that it gives you liberty to think about how
Mm.
do you exist in the social change movement without having to feel as though it means sacrificing every part of you to do that.
Yeah.
And so I love the roots on, I love it rooted in passion, and it's rooted not in a way of telling us what we should do or telling us what's right or wrong, but I loved how you said in calling us in to discover what works for you, what makes sense for you, and very
Mhm.
much acknowledging the realities. And your point of wellness, like the wellness industry is very individualized and constantly telling us that it's about us. And like all we have
Mm.
to do is go and work out and eat healthy and
Yeah.
completely discarding the systems that we're in, that there's a reason why we're not eating healthy or able to work out. These oppressive systems don't allow that to be very easy to get,
Mhm.
food, organic food, if you're not on in an income bracket that allows that, or you've
Mm.
come from multi-generational trauma, or you
Mm.
know and so there's so many different aspects of it, and I
Mhm.
like concepts that consider, as much as the whole person's experience and not just try to put us into a box. How do you
Yeah.
feel about
Yes. I feel great. I'm excited because it's just inspiring and beautiful to share and like be in the conversation around this, because that's how it expands and grows. And I've really seen this in practice when you're in a restorative circle, and
Mm,
especially in a restorative circle where you're like trying to learn more about restorative justice. Like it really does feel like we're all in the kitchen and we're cooking, and everybody's adding their own little seasoning and ingredients and spice, and you're like, ooh, that actually reminded me I love green onion, let me add green onion. Like it is so co-creative in nature, which is
mm,
on purpose. And it's, again, to the language and the definition, with our
mhm,
shared inconceivable human sacredness at the center. There is so much magic and interconnectivity that we will never understand fully with our human minds, but we can feel more deeply into with our human bodies.
mm,
Blessed, grateful for that, right? But it
mhm,
is it is the constructing together of understanding and being with other people in your close 5, close 10, close
mhm,
15, the communities you work with and support, being with them in a way that's practicing wellness, that's practicing compassion. Yeah, there's just so much. But I love pulling in the circle, restorative circle piece, because that really is when you yourself, your body, your mind, you start to be like, oh, we're doing something here, like we're in community, like it is community vibes, and it's so magical, so magical.
Oh, I can't wait. And we're gonna touch on the restorative circle pieces a little bit
Yes.
later, but I am so excited about this.
Mhm.
And I mean, you're naming it already, like what it can really look like. I love your connection to the relationships, and that
Mhm.
is so fundamental to any part. Like no matter what career you are, what stage in
Yeah.
life you are, like relationships is so fundamental. But I loved how you said it earlier about your kiddos. Like how we teach our kids
Mm.
early on, but when we haven't had that training or haven't had that space as we get older, how we have to parent ourselves to learn what it means to have healthy relationships. And so
Yes.
You talked about, but I want to hear more from a professional, maybe leadership
Mhm.
development space, leaders that are in these social sectors and want to bring this to their teams and their organizations. Like, I'm curious your thoughts around how someone, a leader at a nonprofit or even a
Mm.
corporation, or a teacher, or a coach
Mhm.
that wants to incorporate this into their own environments. Like, what would
Mm.
how would that look like? What would that experience
Mhm.
they start
Yes,
experiencing?
absolutely. It's there's so many ways. My mind's like, telling them the first thing that came to mind was like, well, talk to me. No, contact liberated learning. But for real, what it really does start with, it's going to sound simple, but prioritizing relationship. And I'm just going to keep, reiterating that. But let's dig into that. Okay, we're going to
Mhm.
prioritize relationship. Great. What does that actually look like? Let's bring that down into the physical reality of the everyday experience.
Mhm.
So, what do we spend our time on? Okay. How much time is being allotted for certain things? Are you
Mhm.
giving people encouragement, time, space to connect with each other, to connect with themselves, to have genuine relationships start to form? What I've noticed a lot in organizational spaces and, you name it, right? Workplace culture, let's, categorize it as that, is that you sort of get into a groove of things, and then this groove just kind of becomes the norm, right? This, that, this, that, this, that, this, that. We got to make this deadline, that deadline. And it's so easy, especially in our capitalistic society. We have to actually, like you pointed out earlier too, go against what we've been conditioned into, which is what makes practicing restorative justice hard, challenging. I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's easy. No, you have to work at it. You have to bring intentionality and consciousness and awareness to the fact that we're swimming in this water of capitalism. And this is a visual I use when I teach all the time. Is it starts with the conditioning, because we have to really sit with the fact that we are conditioned in so many different ways. All the isms, all the things, it's a topic for a different day. But we have
Right.
to sit with that. We have to sit with that and be like, wow, we have to intentionally focus on well being, on how to prioritize relationships and game plan it. We got to actually talk about the first 30 minutes of our scheduled workday is flex time. We encourage you to do this breath work, to do a yoga, meet with someone. If you work in the virtual space, go outside and connect with another live living human being, right? And hug, right? We need oxytocin, and the way that we get that is through touch. It is well researched that the United States is a touch deprived society and culture. If you look at places
Mhm.
like Mexico City, it is not the case, right? And I feel like culturally we feel and understand this, right? Like you kiss everybody on the cheek and you feel the lovey, the huggy, the tia that gives you the head scratchies, right?
Mhm.
Like all these things. So it's like prioritizing our humanness. It sounds simple, but it's not, and that's I have to keep like reiterating that because we are just again against the grain. So biggest advice when just starting out is to really assess what's here. What does the week look like? What does the week feel like for people? Getting input from every part of your organization. No part is not worthy to reflect on and think about, right? Even the woman who comes in and cleans up the office, like talk to her. What's going on? Humanizing, humanizing. It's something that goes over our heads because, again, the water we're swimming in, it's nobody's fault. It's not something to feel shame about, although that's natural. I've definitely had my moments where I'm like, damn, why did I say that to that kid in that way?
Mhm.
Like I had an emotion come up, I had a trigger in me, and then I allowed it to spill out, which again, this is something I also teach about the cycles of harm. And this is something
Mhm.
that restorative justice breaks. So we are conditioned into these cycles of harm, and without conscious awareness and practice, they will filter through like just, whatever. They'll filter through.
Mhm.
So that's why we need restorative justice to come in and say, hey, let's add some awareness here. Let's add some consciousness here. What do we actually want our work environment to feel like? Do we want people to feel like they belong? I love that. How do we make people feel like they belong? Let's ask them. What would make you feel like you belong in this workspace? Do you need potlucks where we come together around food, which is a fabulous way to connect? Do we need a meditation teacher to come in on Tuesdays and we share stillness and space where we can just like be with ourselves, right? Really embedding all the wellness, initiatives, whatever, embedding it into the week experience and getting that feedback from the people that you're with and that you're leading. What do they need, desire, want, and letting it shift and change. Another big part. Ooh, Manuela, I lost you. She'll come back. She'll come back, I think. The last thing I was going to say was that a big part of offering this guidance and practicing restorative justice in the workspace is change management, being with the ever changing flows of life. So, just being able to manage change, navigate change in a way that's conducive to your capacity, where you're at, and where your team is at. And that was my response. Let me contact Manuela and check in and make sure she is all right. So, with all that said, I think this is a great moment to take a deep breath. Sort of justice gets me jazzed up, gets me really jazzed up. So, yeah, wherever you're at, just letting what we've talked about so far, letting it sink in. And taking a quiet moment, 2 or 3 deep breaths at your pace. To let it settle and to let your mind and intuition and that inner voice guide you in whatever comes up. Maybe it's a curiosity, a question, a thought, and jot it down somewhere or just hold it in your heart. Yay. We were just doing a deep breath.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My goodness.
You're good.
This is why we preverb with
The
everyone
grace.
showing the grace and love because we never know. And I was sitting here like so excited to jump back in and then
Boom. No worries. No
thank
worries.
you.
We rode the wave. And actually it was perfect with what I was ending my response with, which was change management and riding the waves of change and allowing things
Mm,
to change and evolve. A big part of our toxic water and what it teaches us is to not evolve, is to stop the
mm,
evolution of the human species. And if we look at what we're doing to our planet and the type of situation we are in, you know,
yeah.
it's kind of what we see. So to be in a space of evolving and welcoming that evolution, that was kind of how I wrapped up that response. Being okay with change and letting it flow.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, but the video is frozen.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna exit. I'm gonna turn it off for just a moment, but I do
Okay.
want to continue the conversation because everything that you're saying is so, so honest. And I
Mm,
love it because when you were talking, what I was thinking about is the intense urgency culture that has been
mm,
added to our
mm,
way of being in as a professional, right? Especially
mm,
leaving COVID and the pandemic, and not leaving it, but just being in that that full work from home environment that created
Mhm.
such an intensity of how we were meant to show up.
Mm.
And what this looks like now of, okay, if we want to move in this way, to your point of like exist in these waters, because the reality is like we are existing in it.
Mm.
um,
Mhm.
there are folks that are really committed to trying to change the bigger system, but for right now this is really the space that we're in. And so
Yeah.
what are these areas of the culture, the work culture that I hear you talk about, that we really
Mhm.
need to assess? And a lot that comes up and has come up in these previous conversations is an urgency culture.
Mm.
It's the way, and I'll add this to the resource library at the
Mhm.
end. But there's a whole document of white dominant culture that is really,
Yeah.
really good for us to assess that we may not be thinking about. And something else that I was listening to you is around, you mentioned a lot the intentionality and
Mm.
how important this work is in our intentionality towards doing this. And when I've had conversation, intentionality is like huge for me as well, which
Mhm.
makes sense in the work that we do. But something that I have found interesting, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is when we talk about intentionality, and people feel as though intentionality means perfectionism, means
Mm.
having to do it exactly right. And a
Mhm.
lot of the work that I've had to do with clients is,
Mhm.
how do we do continue to be intentional in our actions and the way we hold space and create community, with very much regarding and understanding that that doesn't mean we need to uphold ourselves to being perfect, because we
Mm.
are human.
Yeah. Oh,
And
so good. Mhm.
in our humanness, you mentioned it's not about not making mistakes. We have every right to make mistakes. But what I consider to be intentional is about, we do the best we can with every thought we've done. And then, if by any chance that did cause harm, we acknowledge the harm. We hold
Mm.
ourselves accountable to the harm and talk about it after,
Mm.
because we are humans and it's
Mm.
okay for us to make mistakes. It's not okay to intentionally make harm, which I don't
Mm.
think any of us are doing, but
Mhm.
it may be part of the work that we do, that it may happen.
Mm.
So how do we move forward? And that's really the conversations we're having here. It's like, how do we move forward with what
Mm.
is in front of us?
And right there, you just outlined literally a perfect example of a restorative conversation. Like, I can't make this up. You just did that. It came from your bones, it came from your ancestral knowing. But that's exactly what we teach. That's exactly what we teach in the framework of restorative justice is a really powerful, subset or, tool, which is restorative conversations. What do we do when harm has occurred? And normalizing having those awkward conversations. It being awkward is normal. It's okay. It's okay to have discomfort. And that's another part back to your point about the white dominant culture, right? It teaches us that discomfort, avoid it at all costs. No, thank you. None of that. I can't. When in reality, discomfort is a very normal part of life. Things are going to feel a little uncomfy sometimes. We don't have to live in it, right? Pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, right? So
Mm.
what we teach is that, okay, what happened here? And this is when emotional regulation has taken place, right? So that's maybe again
Mhm.
another conversation for another time. But this is considering that we are in a grounded, ready to talk space. What happened? Okay, this is how it happened for me. This is how it happened for you. Okay. How did what I do make you feel? Oh, it made you feel dismissed. Oh, I wasn't trying to dismiss you. I just was in a hurry and I feel stressed out about this other thing going on. And I'm sorry, I just wasn't really present in the moment, right? Then person responds and it's this dialogue, this practice of dialoguing with each other. Whereas before, we've just, okay, I feel fine. shove it
Yep.
under the rug. It didn't happen. Get the person a coffee, and it's like a weird, like, is this a sorry coffee? I don't know. you know, these sort of things
Mhm.
we've done to like skirt around the issue instead of just being like, this is going to feel a little uncomfortable, but like we're both human in this together. And I know that you value community and courageousness, and because you're part of this workplace or whatever, the context is of the relationship, so we can do this, right? And I think that's a great point to highlight, where leadership comes in
Mhm.
setting those frameworks of like, y'all, values don't just live on paper. They live come on, like they live in real life, and we have to
Mhm.
exercise them. Like it's a muscle. And
Mhm.
what you said also made me think about this term of growth mindset, right? Like, again,
Mhm.
it's not just a fun concept to be like, okay, Carl Dweck, go off. No, it's
Mhm.
like, how do we practice growth mindset? Oh, I actually made a mistake and I have to actually take accountability for that. It hurt. It feels weird. I don't know, and it's so valid. And even when I do this work and bring it to students, you can see it in their body, in their face, in their tone, everything. They're like, oh my God, like I have to take accountability. And it's so human. It's so human to have that feeling. I feel that way to this day. And I, live this practice, and I'm constantly learning more, but it just is human. There's just some things that no perceived identity can take you away from. It's just being human. And there's also something real beautiful in that, where it's like, all right, I feel this discomfort, but I know you also have moments where you've done things wrong and
Mhm.
you've been in that position and you've had to take accountability. So, and then getting to that place, like you described, of where do we go from here? What does repair
Mhm.
look like for you? And what does repair look like for me? Because a lot of times we assume that, oh, you just want me to say sorry. Sorry. I don't like when I get apologized to personally. I'm sorry. Something I heard a RJ practitioner say, and it's never left me. They said, saying sorry without changed action is
Mhm.
manipulation.
Ooh.
And I was like, girl, that hit. That hit for me because of my previous experience as a child and relationship dynamics. There was
Mhm.
always something like annoying to me about people who are just like, I'm sorry. It didn't feel like there's enough there.
Mhm.
And so for me personally, in my, intimate relationships, okay, you're sorry. Thank you for expressing that. And for me to
Mhm.
feel complete here and like we've repaired something, can you explain or elaborate like what you want to do next time better, or how you want to change X thing, right? So it's about that action piece that really brings it all home full circle. And when you get to that point, y'all, I promise the relationships get stronger. You get
Mhm.
closer. When you get through the turbulent waters with someone, you're like, that's a ride or die right there, right? Like that's someone
Mhm.
I can like do life with. And there's something so special about finding those type of relationships that you can be like, okay, you've seen my ugly. You've seen the times where like I've messed up and you're still believing in my goodness. Boom, connection, belonging, all the things we want.
Yes. Woo! Wow.
Went
This
off.
is literally no, so, so, so good. And that and I think a lot of that, when I've talked to executives, CEOs, and board members that are like, okay, but I'm doing the thing, like I've apologized or all this stuff, or I've said it, or we've made our values clear, but there's gaps, like there's something missing. And that exactly what you're saying is what's missing there. It's what
Mhm.
I hear is we talk a lot, we use these big words like authenticity and like what it means to be like authentically connecting to people, or even right now, like it's mental health awareness month, right?
Mhm.
And when we talk about with clients around, okay, what are the practices that you can incorporate to really
Mhm.
consider folks' well-being, folks' mental health?
Mhm.
This is it. Leaders like CEOs, board members, executives that are thinking about what
Mm.
is it that you want to incorporate. It's not just about funding, therapy and executive coaches, which are supportive. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it is not. That is deeply important. So
Yes.
please do that, and if continue to do that. If you're not doing that, find budget for that, because we
Yeah,
need that. It's
totally.
huge. And also, it's as if we were talking about, we can't just like expect folks to heal all of this outside and then
Mm,
constantly come into the same type of environment. Like, that's where the
mm,
rates of burnouts are increasing. That's where
exactly.
the retention rates are going down, because
Mhm.
people aren't able to do it anymore, nor do they want
Yeah.
to do it anymore. And for
Yeah.
good reason, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
So that's what we've been talking about this, of like, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is really big. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts too, of like, why do you think this is different? This type of work is different than other, mental health, emotional
Mm.
health types of practices and work that we've done.
Mhm.
To hear
Yes.
and see.
Yeah, totally. I think what makes restorative justice and the work that I'm teaching and embedding in organizations and
Mhm.
schools different is this whole body approach. It is so normalized and typical in our society where we just like live up here. We live in our mind and we let our mind narrate it all and drive it all. So what I also practice and teach, and something I'm, grateful that you also are aware of and practice, is the somatic part of things.
Mhm.
It's the living it. It is, yes, I love a good theory. I love a good concept. I love a good academic paper and research and statistic. I love all those things. I'm actually a nerd and I'm proud of it. and and I love when those things that I care about and love inform my life. I love when I can take those concepts that people have like deeply thought about and researched, and there's all this evidence behind it, right? And I live it. That's like the
Mhm.
finish line for me. That's like what makes the approach I teach different, is because it's not just like, here's all the information you're ever going to need. It's like, here's a concept, here's a framework. How do you see yourself living this out? How do you see your values in this? How do you, like, it's more introspective so that you can feel that connection with yourself, and then you can
Mhm.
feel that connection with other people. You can understand your emotional self, because again, that's another part of the pie that just gets dismissed, and it people act like, okay, you learn a few things here and there, and you're like, I think I'm good. But you need support and you need community around
Mhm.
that type of well-being too. It's like a big part of that learning, the emotional intelligence learning in that world, is learning that you can't do it on your own. And there are moments when you are going to have to ask other people, can you support me in this? And
Mhm.
that that is exercising some top tier emotional intelligence levels, when you know that you're like, actually, and this is what I would tell teachers when they're in highly emotional places with their students, or something has happened, right? And then the classroom gets hot and the teacher's hot, is that in those moments, maybe you're not the adult for that situation. So having the awareness and the emotional intelligence to be like, I'm going to tap out here. I feel really upset.
Mhm.
I got my friend next door who I talked to in the beginning of the year that they gonna have my back. If anything were to happen, I'm gonna go get them. I'll be right back, right? Instead
Mhm.
of adding fuel to the fire and whatever else comes after that. So yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought, but that's just kind of what came out.
No, it's great. Community is so fundamental, and it's so fundamental
Yes,
for this work that we're doing.
totally.
But there's so much, and I'll attach it to, like, I was just listening to a podcast about this, of even in
Yes.
partnership. I love that you brought partnership into that, because again,
Mhm.
this work, when we're able to do this work not only as professionals and in our professional capacity, but it trickles into our personal capacity and how
Oh
this
yeah.
works. And so it is deeply beautiful to see that, and this concept around how important it is to have a community to guide you
Mm,
into feeling instead of relying everything on one person. And if we rely it back to a professional sense, so relying it on one job, right?
yeah. You're cutting up again.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, I'm so
Okay,
sorry. How about
you're
that?
good. You're good. It's better. I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So point is, we need community. That's literally the
Yes.
gist of it. And we will, I'm really, really sad that our technology was in our, was trying to make things hard for us today, but it's okay. We're going to learn from it and adjust
Persevered.
because this is not our first time, because this is a very exciting opportunity that we've been able to start connecting and learning about this together. So I
Hmm.
do want to respect your time and our time together. And I want to get to our last question here, which is the question I ask all our guests, which is around
Mm,
living a life con fuerza, is about reclaiming our inner power to live in alignment to our values. How are you
mm,
teaching to live a life con fuerza? And what does living a life con fuerza in Spanish,
mm.
which mean to you?
Ah, thank you for this question. To me, living a life con fuerza. Ooh, it just like does a little something to me. It's like, whoa. This makes me like, okay. It feels like what it means to me in this moment in my development in my journey just means like going all in and
Mhm.
not being afraid of my power, my knowledge, my expertise, my skill set. Um, a lot of times, especially as Latinas, we're sort of really we're specifically molded. I feel like culturally and
Mhm.
like what our parents had in mind for us and what our responsibilities are and all the things it can and what the world wants from us, right? I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa. I was one of three other black or brown students all throughout my
Mhm.
elementary experience. I mean, assimilation and white culture got to me at a young age, and I was straightening through college. Can you believe it? Like it
No,
just
those beautiful curls.
like I look back at my old younger self like, girl, the curls were fine. But all that to say is that like to be who I am today and to stand in my power and my knowledge, my body of work that I'm like continuously birthing and bringing into the world, like that's what con fuerza brings me to. It's like, yes, we're going to reclaim this indigenous wisdom. We're going to bring
Mhm.
back the knowledge and the love of our ancestors, and it's going to be done with grace and compassion and strength because Lord knows we need it.
Mhm.
So that's yeah, that's sort of my final thoughts, and I love just the phrase itself, and I feel like that's something that I even want to journal about later. So thank you for
Oh, thank
that.
you.
Journal
Thank
prompt.
you. Yes. Oh, we have many of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a minute left, and I hope this camera works with me. But before we hop off, I am just deeply grateful for you. Thank you, Amiga, for joining me in this space, for doing the work that you're doing, and wanting to show us and educate us more on this incredible restorative justice work. And
Mhm.
also, for those of you that have stayed with us and watched us through, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really excited to share a new opportunity that Con Fuerza is starting, which is our alignment and community and connection circles. And this is going to be a collaborative workshops where we're going to have space to reflect and think about everything we've been learning and
Mm,
listening, witnessing in these Wisdom Wednesdays conversations. We've had so many of them and we've learned so much, but we can't heal in a vacuum. We need to be able to start applying it and really thinking about how it relates back to us. And so
mm.
those of you that stayed on to watch us, you're going to be able to see the registration link that's going to be attached to the episode notes here. And so please register. It's going to be on May 22nd, and I'm really excited as Eli is going to be joining us. Yeah.
Yay! I'll be there. Let's do it.
Yes, and you're going to be guiding us through a restorative circle practice where
Mm,
we're going to be able to witness what it means to be in this restorative justice facilitation. And so I'm really grateful, really excited for you to be with me and join us and hold this space for everyone.
mm.
Thank you, everyone that stayed us. And as always, you can continue to learn about all of this work when in our resource library. We're going to attach all the links to all these great resources we spoke about today. I was trying to write them all down of all the links I'm going to need to find.
Yeah, all the links.
Yes, but yes, thank you once again. Any final words or thoughts before we hop off?
Mm. Just thank you for the space. Thank you for the Wisdom Wednesdays and the platform to speak on things that we want to speak about and centering well-being. Like, just thank you for the work you do and the platform and just the time to be able to chat. Felt so good and nourishing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dahlia. So
Hmm.
much love for you. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you so soon. Happy
Yes.
Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for your
Thank
grace
you.
and love.
Bye.
Oh my